Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Koff. I'm a clinical psychologist and author of The Evolution of Human Pair Bonding, Friendship, and Sexual Attraction. The book was produced by Routledge and came out in 2021. The book presents an evolutionary history of romantic love, male-female pair bonding, same-sex friendship, and sexual attraction. I draw upon a wide range of research in this book, from sexuality research to gay lesbian studies, history, anthropology, literature, and evolutionary science. In this video, I share some of the main themes of the book and some of its implications. I hope by the end of the video you'll be intrigued enough to read the book. The premise of the book is that through evolutionary history, humans have employed sexual attraction and romantic love for a variety of functions, and not only to support male-female mating pair bonds and procreative sex, which has been largely the focus of evolutionary psychology and biology. And while that's important, those are not the only functions of sexual attraction and romantic love. I'll argue that romantic love and sexual attraction were integral to devoted same-sex friendships, and those friendships indirectly supported reproductive success. I'll also challenge the conventional view that same-sex attraction is unusual in some way, or deviant, or affecting only a few people. The book is divided up into 5 chapters. Let's take a look at each chapter. In Chapter 1, I outline the main ideas of the book and review basic concepts and terms that are specific to evolutionary theory. This book is actually a follow-up to one that I wrote 20 years ago called True Nature, A Theory of Sexual Attraction. In this current book, I expand upon those early ideas and draw upon research that wasn't available to me 20 years ago, including some very recently published data. In this chapter, I also acknowledge the work of writers who are very influential on my thinking, and I urge you to check out their work, including Tim Taylor's The Prehistory of Sex. Tim describes the evolution of sexual culture among early humans. Helen Fisher's The Anatomy of Love describes the evolution of romantic love among early humans. If you're interested in evolutionary psychology, a good place to start is David Buss's The Evolution of Desire. David Greenberg's The Construction of Homosexuality is a classic text and provides a comprehensive review of same-sex attraction and behavior across a range of cultures. I also draw upon Gil Hurd's fieldwork in Melanesia among hunter-gatherer societies. And I acknowledge 2 influential writers, Frank Muscarella and Rob Kirkpatrick, who published papers with ideas very similar to mine in 2000. Okay, let's take a look now at Chapter 2. In this chapter, I take an in-depth look at the evolution of reproductive mating pair bonds among humans and long-term monogamy as a successful mating strategy among humans. I'll argue that romantic love and sexual attraction are important to keeping mating pair bonds together. By monogamy, I'm not referring to sexual exclusivity, which is how we think of that term today. I'm really talking about intimate, loving, sexual pair bonds that are proto-family units for raising children to reproductive age. I begin this book by talking about mating pair bonds because it's relatively easy for people to recognize that romantic love and sexual attraction are very important to establishing mating pair bonds and having children and raising those children to reproductive age. Therefore, those traits around romantic love and sexual attraction and pair bonding should be widely dispersed through the population. And indeed, many of us desire to form a very close bond with a mate and form a family, even if we don't desire to have children. In this chapter, I'll also talk about the role of culture in institutionalizing mating pair bonds in different forms of marriage. All right, let's move on and take a look at Chapter 3. All right, in this chapter, I explore the role of love and same sex friendship in human evolution, starting with the early division of labor and the gendering of labor in human societies. Among early humans and hunter gatherer societies, as big game hunting became more coordinated and more sophisticated, men needed to spend more time practicing hunting in order to be really good at it. In some contemporary hunter gatherer societies, it can take 15 years or more to become a really skilled hunter. In those contemporary hunter gatherer societies, and I'll argue in early human hunter gatherer societies in ancient history, young boys then began to spend most of their time with other boys and men practicing tracking and hunting to become really good at hunting. In short, boys and men spent most of their time together, hunting, and sometimes far away from camp. In those all-male environments, I'll argue that successful men were those who could form strong temporary alliances with other boys or men, and who could form strong, devoted friendships with other men, who could be partners in hunting, who could be allies in defending against hostile males within the camp or hostile males outside of the camp, partners who could also help them obtain enough resources to get a quality reproductive mate and then raise their children to reproductive age. So I'll argue that those devoted same-sex friendships promoted reproductive success. I'll argue that those devoted friendships also involved love and sexual attraction. In early human societies, women functioned largely as mothers, grandmothers, caregivers of children, and those were activities that kept them very close to camp. Gathering found foods was an activity that they could do close to camp and keep an eye on young children and infants who needed more attention. In short, girls and women spent most of their time together. I will argue that in those all-female environments, successful women were those who could form strong temporary alliances with girls or women and could form strong, devoted friendships with other women who could be a partner in childcare, who could be a partner in food gathering and other domestic chores, who could be a protector against aggressive women within the camp or hostile men within the camp. And those devoted same-sex friendships help support those women raising their children to reproductive age. And I'll argue that those devoted friendships involve love and sexual attraction. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of evidence of devoted female friendship in contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, largely because researchers haven't looked at this area. On the other hand, there's a wealth of information about devoted same-sex friendships among men in contemporary hunter-gatherer societies. And I will describe dozens and dozens of those societies that span Africa, include Madagascar, that cross Indonesia, and are in South America. In fact, I'll report on more than 50 contemporary hunter-gatherer societies and pastoral societies that have a strong tradition of devoted male friendships. In many of those societies, those friendships are referred to as blood brotherhoods or sworn brotherhoods, or they have unique names to those cultures and are recognized in those cultures as relationships that are equivalent to a spousal relationship. Those devoted friendships often involve love and sexual intimacy as far as we can tell, and I will cite some evidence for that. Let's now move on to chapter 4. All right, in this chapter, I'll explore evidence of devoted same-sex friendship from ancient agricultural societies through 5th century Rome in the West and through late 19th century China and Japan in the East. There are many examples of devoted male friendship throughout history. I will cite many of those. They can be found especially in warrior societies, but also in Buddhist monasteries in China and Japan. One of the earliest examples of devoted male friendship can be found in the earliest example of written literature, and that's the legend of Gilgamesh and Enkidu. Gilgamesh was king of Uruk, an early Mesopotamian city-state. The poem of Gilgamesh is at least 5,000 years old and older than the text of the Hebrew Bible. In this chapter, I will also cite a few instances of devoted female friendships that can be found in the literature. I'll end the history of devoted friendships in the West around the Christianization of Rome in the 5th century, because friendship begins to take a decidedly different turn at that time. Christian writers are actively stigmatizing same-sex attraction and behavior, and sexualizing people and desexualizing friendship. And those friendships began to take an increasingly contemporary appearance, one that we'll readily recognize. We can see the same phenomenon happening in the East, in pre-industrial China and Japan, as they increase their contact with the industrialized West and are confronted with Western Christian values that are very different from their own. This history in this chapter is important to themes that I pick up in chapter 5. So let's take a look at chapter 5. In chapter 5, I try to reconcile the long-held belief among some prominent sexual scientists that male bisexuality is largely behavioral and categorical, despite evidence of devoted male friendships that I've reported in the last 2 chapters. The same sexual scientists argue from sexual arousal studies that men are largely attracted to women or to men, and very few men are attracted to men. On the other hand, scientists argue that women have largely a flexible sexuality. I'll review evidence from sexual arousal studies that supposedly demonstrate that men have a categorical sexual response and show how that interpretation is not entirely correct. I'll also review very recently published evidence that supports my view that many men have a bisexual sexual response. In this chapter, I'll also argue that sex researchers should expand the social context of their work beyond just the 10 or 15 years of their recent literature review. That 10 or 15 years represents a tiny, tiny slice of human sexual experience in only one culture. Expanding that context to the past 150 years would be better, or the past 500 years, or the past 1,000 years, and taking a broader context of their work. It's easy to see how the current conceptualization of sexuality is highly unusual and different from the past. Our current insistence on labeling sexuality in the binary and in sexualizing people and desexualizing friendship has a severe limiting effect on devoted same-sex friendships for both men and women. And it doesn't have to be that way. All right, that is a quick summary of my book, The Evolution of Human Pair Bonding, Friendship and Sexual Attraction by Rutledge. I hope you found it at least somewhat intriguing and will check it out. You can find the book on the Rutledge website or on Amazon.com. If you like this video, please like it because that increases the probability that others will see it. Also share it with your friends and colleagues. Lastly, thank you for watching the video.